Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. This time I wanted to dedicate this video to one of my favorite villains in the Marvel Universe. He's not my favorite, but one of my favorite. And particularly he's known as being an X-Men villain. As you know by the title of this video, it is the Juggernaut. Now I grabbed a short stack of Juggernaut covers, books that have the Juggernaut on the cover. There's a ton of them out there. There's a ton of great Juggernaut covers, but I just grabbed some that were in arm's reach that I think are some of my absolute favorite of him. Before I get to showing some of these, the Juggernaut, as we all know, is the brother of Professor X. Professor X is the founder of the X-Men. On the big screen, the Juggernaut first showed up in X-Men The Last Stand in 2006, played by Vinnie Jones. You know, although I like Vinnie Jones, I don't think the representation of the Juggernaut in that movie was well done. You know, they changed a lot about him. There was no mentioning that he was the brother of Professor X or any of those things. The movie, I think, was just bad all around. The way they handled the Juggernaut, the way they handled the Phoenix, more importantly, and other things. It just wasn't a good movie. But that's the first movie we saw the Juggernaut. The second movie we saw the Juggernaut in was Deadpool 2. Now, I know a lot of people, and I think so too, more or less, that a lot of people feel that that was a better representation of the Juggernaut. It probably was. It probably was. And it did acknowledge in that one small scene that he is the brother of Professor X. They didn't right out say it, but it was mentioned. And, you know, for the fans that know the Juggernaut, they were able to pick up on that. But that is it. I mean, the Juggernaut was also on the animated show, which I thought did him a lot of justice. The first one was in the first season, where it sort of touched up on the Juggernaut's first appearance in comics, sort of. The fact that the X-Mansion was destroyed and all of that. And then later he showed up. I think he showed up a couple more times, but the one that was more memorable for me when he showed up again was when it involved the Dark Phoenix saga. You know, when it's just like in the comics, when they all went to, I think, Banshee's ancestral mansion in Ireland, and they found the Juggernaut and Black Tom. That was great stuff. That was great stuff. So the Juggernaut's been around since 1965, I believe. A very cool character. Like I said earlier in the video, one of my absolute favorites. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a video just on him, and just to show a couple of my cover appearances, some of my favorite cover appearances of the Juggernaut, because I always feel that Juggernaut covers are some of the best. Like I said, there's a ton of them out there, and I'm not going to not even scratch the surface of how many Juggernaut covers are out there in this video. But I'm going to show you probably some well-known covers. Here we have the Mighty Thor number 411, and right on Thor's hammer, it says the title of this particular issue, "Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut." Definitely, you know, as you can see him, it's definitely a memorable phrase, because as you know, with the Juggernaut, he absorbed the powers of the Sidorak crystal, which turned him into a human Juggernaut, which makes him impossible to kill. And once he comes at you, there's nothing in the world that could stop him. He could go through any barrier, hence the name, the Juggernaut. So I thought he was a very well-conceived character who's really stood the test of time. But here's I think this is definitely a famous cover, which the Juggernaut appears on. Here's another one. I don't think, now these two, I don't know if they're necessarily famous covers, but that is the only titles, Mighty Thor, that I'm going to show outside of X-Men. I know the Juggernaut showed up. There were a couple covers of him in the Amazing Spider-Man run. They're just packed away somewhere. But they were also considered classic covers of the Juggernaut. But here's another one. And this one relates to what I was just talking about earlier when it came to the X-Men cartoon. When he and Black Tom were in the ancestral home of Banshee, when the X-Men went to Ireland. This was a two-parter. This is the second part of the two-parter, where they're trying to fend off both Black Tom and Juggernaut are trying to defeat the X-Men, rather. And I think later in issue 123, the villain Arcade was hired by the Juggernaut and Black Tom to capture the X-Men and put them through Murder World, which was the storyline of 123 and 124. Here's the first part of that story. Here we go again. Who shall stop the Juggernaut? Now, this is the first time that the new X-Men meet the Juggernaut. And the issue before this, as you well know, issue 101, more famously, it's the first appearance of Jean Grey as Phoenix, but it's also the first full appearance of Black Tom Cassidy. And Black Tom Cassidy was in the Deadpool 2 movie, but he wasn't used very well at all. I think he originally had a bigger role in that movie, but it was cut short to use the Juggernaut. But anyway, here we have, who would win in a fight between Colossus, who can turn his skin into metal, against the Juggernaut, who seemingly cannot be defeated or destroyed. Pretty cool cover. Definitely another great cover of the Juggernaut. Now here, I'm getting into the Silver Age of X-Men now. And you know, sometimes I forget how many times the Juggernaut appeared in the Silver Age for the X-Men. Now here was his last appearance in the Silver Age, I believe. But here he is on the cover. X-Men number 46, one of my favorite covers of the Silver Age X-Men run, and definitely one of my favorite Juggernaut covers. As you could see, you saw the Mighty Thor, 411, which was the early 90s. I showed you the 70s, late 70s, I believe, X-Men with Black Tom. And here we have the late 60s. The Juggernaut's appearance stayed relatively the same, his costume and all of that. Now, today, I couldn't tell you if the Juggernaut looks anything the same. I assume he still has the helmet because that's iconic with the character. But his costume always stayed the same. Always said, what is this color? I'm colorblind, so I'm having trouble. I would assume this is a reddish-brown color, that the Juggernaut, the costume. But it was always the same, you know, with the lines and the helmet and those things around his arm and fist. They always stayed constant for decades with the Juggernaut. It's not uncommon for characters, especially the X-Men, to go through costume changes. But the Juggernaut stayed relatively the same. Magneto stayed relatively the same too, but I think now within the last 10 years they changed his costume up a bit, which looks pretty cool. But I don't know if they did anything with the Juggernaut recently. But here is another one of my absolute favorite Juggernaut covers right here. Look at this one. Absolutely beautiful. To me, it's almost like a somber Juggernaut. You know, he looks like he's, you know, even though he looks angry, he's trying to stop the X-Men, of course. That's what he always tries to do. But there's almost like a somberness to him. You can't see his face completely because he's got the helmet on, but to me, that's what it reminds me of. But it's still a terrific cover. You know, X-Men Silver Age Juggernaut covers are some of the best. Now here with this one, this is the first time we see the Juggernaut with pants. You know, when he originally showed up, he wore shorts. He was bare-legged, which I thought was kind of weird when I first saw the original issues where the Juggernaut showed up. You know, it just seemed odd, awkward, and all that stuff. But anyway, this is the sequel in X-Men 32. This is the sequel. This is the third time we see the Juggernaut, but it's the sequel to when the X-Men fight the Juggernaut. They originally fought the Juggernaut in issues 12 and 13. He was defeated, and he didn't come back until this issue. And he was wearing these pants, but he still kept everything else the same, as you can see. The helmet, the color scheme, the design on the waist and around the arms, all that. So it was a really cool issue, too. You know, again, it's like sometimes, you know, the X-Men series wasn't that popular in the 60s. It wouldn't have been canceled. Well, it wouldn't have been put on hold, let's just say. But, you know, when you go back and you read some of those 60s X-Men books, I mean, they're actually pretty good. And this one's no exception. This was a pretty good story, I thought, where he was, you know, Professor X had him brought back to the X-Mansion so that maybe he could help him. And then things went haywire and the Juggernaut got out. Now here we have X-Men 13. this is the second appearance of the Juggernaut. Now, I was talking about that earlier. And again, you can still say he's pretty much the same. I mean, but like I said, when he first showed up in issues 12 and 13, he was wearing shorts, and he didn't have like the pants that he would wear throughout the decades. But here's another one. I think, even though I like this cover, I do like this cover a lot, it's probably my least favorite out of all the Juggernaut covers I've showed you so far. It's pretty cool, but it seems like more of the emphasis is on Angel, which isn't bad, but you just see like the whole arm and all that stuff, although cool. And you see the Human Torch throwing fire at him. Nothing could stop the Juggernaut, right? Oh, before I continue, I think it was in this issue, you could correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was the first time the term "nothing can stop the Juggernaut" was mentioned. I think. I don't think it was mentioned in this one. I would have to reread it, but I think that was the first time in issue 33 where you heard that term. And we talked about that earlier in the video. Nothing can stop the Juggernaut. That's something that's always been said over the decades with the Juggernaut. I think it was the first time it was said was in issue 33. I think. If I'm wrong, correct me. But yeah, this one's my least favorite out of all the Juggernaut covers I've shown so far. It's not bad. I like it. But it's my least favorite. And this is my favorite, which is also the first appearance of the Juggernaut. I think it's great. It's great for many reasons. The red background always looks cool. You know, the blue against it. And seeing the Juggernaut, you don't see his face, but you see him breaking through I think it's either the ground or the door I think it's the door, according to the story, that was keeping him, keeping the X-Men away from him as he was breaking through the mansion. But I think this is a great issue. It creates a lot of, the cover, I think it creates a lot of suspense on who is the Juggernaut. It looks like, oh my God, the X-Men's going to really get it from this guy. Looks like a big monster. And he is. And he is. When you see him at the last page, finally, he's an intimidating character. A very intimidating character. And I think sometimes the Juggernaut is a little underrated. Now, you know, his first appearance, and you know, it's not cheap. It's not super expensive either, but it's certainly not cheap. A lot of people who are comic book fans, especially X-Men fans, want the first appearance of the Juggernaut, so it's hardly underrated or undervalued. But despite that, I still think that sometimes the Juggernaut is kind of pushed off to the side. I think if he shows up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and he's used properly, I think it would create a little bit more appreciation for the character. As a matter of fact, I think he has a #1 issue coming out, or it had come out already. I don't know. You know, so obviously there's interest in the Juggernaut. Well, that's it. That's my little dedication video to the Juggernaut. I think he's a great character, and covers with the Juggernaut are some of my favorite covers in comic books, especially the ones I've showed you. So tell me, what is your favorite Juggernaut cover out of the ones I've shown or the ones I haven't shown? In any event, take care, everyone. See you soon.